5 brand new Quest 2 games came out today. Should you buy any of them? Today I'm giving my first impressions on all of them to see if they're worth your money. Let's do it.
Okay, so the first game that was released today is EVERSLAUGHT Invasion. This is a game actually that was originally launched on PC VR. Technically, it's a totally different game because it's built from the ground up for Quest, and it doesn't play the same as the original EVERSLAUGHT. This is pretty much a arena wave-based combat game. First of all, there's 3 different classes that you can pick from, each with its own ups and downs. One of them is more mobile, one of them has more firepower, one of them is designed more for close hand-to-hand combat, and each of those classes, as you play through these different arenas, essentially, will be able to be upgraded as you level up. And you can switch classes at any time. You're not stuck to any one class when you start playing. There's actually a really cool home ship that you start off on, and you get to go around the ship. It's where you'll switch your weapons, choose which gauntlet weapon that you want. Speaking of gauntlet weapons, each character has 2 different gauntlet weapons, whether it's like a shotgun-style blast, a grenade type of thing, or just like a gun. You also have a grappling hook on your left wrist that you can aim and fire with to jump up onto ledges and stuff, or to pull yourself closer to enemies. There's also a whole bunch of different weapons that you unlock as you progress through the game. So as you level up, you'll unlock more weapons to use in these arena modes. Now, the best part of this is probably going to be the co-op multiplayer, where you can join in with friends or even strangers to play in these arenas and battle together. I did not get the chance to try that because there's obviously not a lot of people online currently, but what I played, it felt pretty good. The combat was not bad, but it was a little weightless, like waggle your sword around type of combat. It's definitely not physics-based. It doesn't feel like there's any weight to your weapons. It almost feels like you have to reach farther out, too, than you would expect to with your weapons. And I don't know why it felt like that, but with my swords, I had to extend my arm all the way when it felt like they were right on top of me. As you play in the specific arenas, you'll be able to earn skill points and money to upgrade your weapons during the course of each match, if you will, in between waves. The waves get progressively harder as you go, and the enemies get harder, and there's different types of enemies. There's also different locations you can go to, which I didn't get the chance to play any other locations. But my first impressions of this were pretty good. It's definitely not perfect, but I mean, it's fun. It's definitely not perfect, but there's different cool mechanics like upgrades and level up that'll keep you probably coming back for more and more. It's not specifically my style game. I'm not a big fan of wave-based arena-style games. Next up, let's talk Crimen Mercenary Tales, which I think is how it's said. This is like a stylistic, story-based game where you are in this tavern and you play through different stories from these different characters. You actually give them a high five to start playing through the story. It's made by the same developer as The Wizards and Age of Sigmar, and the combat in this is very similar to Age of Sigmar, where it feels okay, but it's definitely not something I would play specifically for the combat. It actually gets a little monotonous because what happens is you like come up on these group of enemies, and you're going to watch for their cue to slash at you and block that specific direction, and then you're going to hit them. Now, you can slash at them before they hit you, but generally speaking, in order to knock down or kill the bigger enemies, not like the standard enemy, because they're pretty easy to dispatch usually, you're going to have to actually wait for at least one swing to block, which can get pretty hectic as you're waiting for multiple people to swing at you and hit you. I'm not sure hectic in a good way, more like hectic in I'm waiting here and then they all slash at the same time. You have to try to block them all at the same time. There's different types of enemies depending on the story that you're playing. One of the stories that I played was this vampire werewolf story, which the environment was pretty cool. It was kind of creepy. Visually, it doesn't look bad. It's stylistic, like a storybook kind of thing for Quest. The stories themselves are pretty short. The werewolf one, I think I completed in like 15, 20 minutes. And then the next one that I played was this pirate one where you're in this cavern looking for this like Incan temple, and that took me about the same, probably about 15 minutes, I think. Enemies were different in both, as was the story, obviously. There's a lot of climbing depending on which story that you're playing in. It's not necessarily something I would like go out of my way to recommend to someone or even remember because it's just okay. But if you're looking for kind of like a piratey, mercenary type of game with some simplistic combat and kind of cool, funny stories, you could be interested in this. Next up is Hello Neighbor. Now, this game is a adaptation, obviously, of the Hello Neighbor games on a lot of other platforms. This is Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue, and in this game, you're trying to rescue one of your buddies that is locked in the basement that was captured by the neighbor. And in order to do that, you're going to take control of several different kids with different abilities. Now, there's a few things about this game I want to mention up front. First of all, click turning only. Also, grabbing things isn't bad, but it can feel a little bit weird. I don't know why. I had issues grabbing a few things here and there. So those things out of the way. The art style is pretty cool. It's just like Hello Neighbor on other platforms. It's simplistic on Quest. Obviously, it's not like super lighting effects and all this stuff going on. But on Quest, it is pretty simple. The mechanics, though, are all there, where you have to sneak around, distract the neighbor, solve these puzzles, and the mechanic of switching back and forth between the kids is pretty fun. It's definitely something you have to keep in mind, like all the abilities as you're playing, because you'll switch from one to the other. You'll do something you know you need to do, and then you got to try to remember which one to switch back to, where they are, because each person is in a different part of the house or in a different location, and you start off in different spots. The way that you solve puzzles is based on where they're at. They kind of hide in a closet until you need them, and then you'll solve that portion of the puzzle, whether it's getting a key to a part of a room that you can't reach, and then the other person goes and grabs it from the other side, or solving a puzzle on one side, or turning on some sort of switch so you can activate something, or a camera, or distracting the dude, or pulling him over, or whatever it is. It's got some really cool mechanics. I have not finished it yet, so I don't know the length. But it's got some cool stuff going on that I think does a good job of bringing this game into VR. So if you're a fan of this type of game, then you'll probably love this. As someone that's not necessarily like really into the lore of this game and doesn't necessarily really understand everything happening because I haven't played the other games, it was a fun game, like a fun kind of sneaking type of distraction game. But it wasn't like mind-blowing insane. But if you're a fan of this type of game or you're a fan of this series, then you'll probably really enjoy it. Next up, Cards and Tankards. Now, this is a game that I did not get a chance to play this week. I have messed around with it a bit in the past. This is actually a really cool concept and something that I really would love to get into and play more of if I had the chance. This is where you're going to build up your deck and actually play a game against other opponents online or against some AI opponents, I believe. And there's 160 cards currently available for you to build out your deck. You're able to customize your deck. It has crossplay, multiplayer between different platforms. This is a collectible game too, so you're going to get cards in the game and collect them. And there is in-app purchases. You're going to actually purchase packs in the game. It's randomized, just like if you were to get a pack at the store, and that's how you collect your decks. It's a really fun idea. It's something I would definitely love to mess around with more if I had the time to collect cards and to be playing a game like a TCG type of game. Next up, Horror Bar VR. This is kind of a title I wasn't really sure about, and I actually really enjoyed it. It's one of those time-based, cooking style games, except for it's in a horror bar, and you're cooking things like heart attack burgers, which is not a burger that's so greasy it'll give you a heart attack, but a literal heart burger, where you grind up the heart and you grill it on the grill. So you're mixing zombie drinks with chicken feet, taking out the piranha and smashing it so you can fry it in the frying pan, and overall just disgustingly creating food like finger fries, for instance. Not French fries. You fry up fingers and give it to the zombies and stuff. It's got some funny stuff going on. It's pretty interesting. The few gripes I had about it are, number one, it kind of throws you into the game. It doesn't really tell you what to do. The menus, for me, were very confusing to start off with. Like, I had no idea what to do. In fact, there's so much going on around you in your little booth where you're making stuff. When it tells you to get an ingredient, I had a hard time finding them at first. When I finally found them and memorized where they were, I was fine. But for some reason, I had a hard time every time I learned a new recipe, finding where the pieces to that recipe were. Whether it was a plate, it wasn't obvious. I think that what they should have done, because there's training levels, essentially. Every time you get a new recipe, you can go into training. It'll teach you how to do it. I think what they should have done when they do that training is walk you through it in such a way that they highlight the items so you know where they are. Because I spent time trying to find the friggin' items just to make the dish in the training mode. Like, not in the regular mode, but like, it just gives you this recipe and says, do this. And I couldn't find where the pieces were. So keep that in mind. That was a little annoying, and the menus are kind of weird. The way that it works, it's kind of odd how you jump out of the game into each day, and I don't know. The menu system's a little confusing to me. It's not detrimental to the game itself. It's pretty fun. Visually, it's obviously simple and disgusting. But for me, the menu just got me frustrated. So keep that in mind. The game is fun. Menu frustrating.
There you go. Those are all 5 games that came out today on the Quest platform. Do you like this video style? Let me know down below. Instead of doing like the gameplay style and just playing through the games, I thought it might be more interesting and more valuable to you if I just kind of go over the games in a shorter video, all of them at one time, kind of give what I like, what I don't like, what they're about, all that kind of stuff. Let me know what you think down in the comments if you like this video style and if you think I should do it in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy questing.